Sam Dutton. I'm a developer advocate I am actually Australian, but based in London. I do a lot of work on progressive web apps. One thing, by the way, before I get started, I work quite a lot with audio and video APIs, and I've worked with the WebRTC team in the past as well. So if you have particular questions about video on the web, WebRTC, real-time communication, please feel free to come and chat to me. I'll be here for the rest of the day. I'd love to hear the kind of things you're working on. Anyway, so we've heard a lot today about the kind of core principles of progressive web app design. They need to be fast and they need to be reliable. The core idea here is that we're building things that work really well no matter what the state of the network or the conditions, the type of the device that your users are working on. We need to be able to handle flaky networks, and we need really great, smooth interactions and seamless navigation, no matter what the conditions are, no matter what the device is. And what we're talking about, in a way, is developing trust, the trust that the user has for your app. We're talking about that kind of engagement you get with an app. When you use a really good app, you feel that real connection right from the start. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about that part of it. The way that you build that engagement with your user right from the moment when they install and first use your app. So I'd like to begin that by kind of looking at the center of the world for users on mobile, which is the home screen. The kind of core idea here is that your web apps must have a visibility on the user's home screen. And of course, we've had this for a while. We've had the add to home screen item in the menu, which was great. It was a way, essentially, of bookmarking a link to your site and adding an icon for that on the user's home screen. Now, that's been around for some time, and it worked pretty well. But there were several problems with this. The first kind of most obvious problem is that most users never discovered this. Most users never went to the menu and found that. And what we found is that really only a very small number of users actually used the menu item. It's buried. People don't find it. Secondly, it functions as a way of adding a bookmark to a page. So if the user is on a page deep within your site and they select Add to Home Screen, well, that adds a link to that page. Whereas, you probably want your users to start, with the index page for the site. The third problem that we've had with the kind of old-fashioned Add to Home Screen is simply that when users see an icon on their home screen, they expect that app to work offline. And when you add your icon to the user's home screen, you're kind of making a contract with the user that when they click on that icon, when they tap that icon, that something will happen, even when they're offline. So, the first way that we've improved this is through the web app manifest. People in the room here, could you put up your hand if you use a web app manifest on your site? Does anyone use a web app manifest? Oh, that's pretty good. Okay, that's good. This is a really, really simple way to give the browser information about your site. This, if you do nothing else, this can take you like 5 minutes to add this to your site and give the browser better information about how to work with your site. So it's really straightforward. You create a manifest file, which is a kind of simple JSON that describes your app, and then you add a link to that manifest in the head element of your document, of the HTML file. If we look at the kind of details here, you'll see, for example, we have a short name there, which corresponds to the name up here that's displayed on the home screen. And then we have some values for icons. This gives you the ability to add icons for different screens. So in this example, you could just see the one that's 48 by 48 pixels. But you can add icons that work on different viewport sizes, so different devices like tablets or whatever. And then this is a kind of simple one. You can add a background color value. Now what this does is gives you a kind of splash screen effect. So when the app is starting up, you see that color displayed on screen with the icon and the name displayed as well. Now, the purpose of this is a simple thing, but it gives the user that instant effect and that kind of engagement they get, you know, that sense of trust, because they get that instant startup when they tap on the icon on the home screen. So just a simple way to make a big improvement and keep the kind of, in some ways, you know, the branding of your app consistent. Now, I mentioned before the problem with add to home screen from the menu, the problem of where to start. Well, in the web app manifest, you can specify a start URL. So what we're saying here is, you know, simply that the start URL is the index page. A little thing you can do with that, by the way, is that you could add a hash, a fragment, that would specify that, you know, for analytics, that the user started at an address which came from, you know, tapping on the icon on the home screen. So you could add something like, I don't know, like hash UMA source equal home screen, something like that. Just a simple way to check how many of your users are actually getting to your app via the home screen. The other thing you'll see here is display standalone. What that means is that the web app will have an appearance very like an app. If you have display browser, for example, the app will have much more of the browser UI and UX components, so they'll have the ability to navigate as if they were on a web page. The last one here, kind of straightforward, is the orientation that the app will start at. If you think about, for example, like you built a keyboard app, you would always want that to start up in landscape, and it would be confusing to the user if it didn't start up like that. So, you know, in this case it's portrait, but for that keyboard app, you'd make that landscape, and that would, you know, make much more sense to the user than if, you know, it tried to start up the keyboard in portrait mode. The theme color defines how the app is displayed in things like the app launcher on the, you know, by the system. And in this case, you know, it's black to suit the branding, in this case, of the Washington Post. Again, another simple way to kind of keep that, I don't know, app-like experience without, you know, without much effort at all. That's just really easy. Okay, so this is all good stuff. It gives the user a more consistent experience, allows you to add that kind of branding and instant startup. But, you know, we still had this problem where users had to install by going to a menu, and, you know, that just wasn't happening. So what the browser vendors realized was it would be better if there was an automated prompt for the user to install. If the browser, you know, understood that the user was engaged with your app. Now, there are some conditions for this, of course. It doesn't just happen immediately. Firstly, like I said, when you have an icon on the home screen, it's like a contract that the app will work offline. So the first condition to get a prompt from the browser to install to home screen is your app must use Service Worker. That's crucial because there is no other way that you could be providing a good offline experience unless there was Service Worker implemented. Secondly, the app has to have a manifest, so you get this kind of consistent experience like I was describing before. And the third part of this depends on the browser, depends on different rules, heuristics, but essentially the idea is that the user must show signs of engagement with your app. So that they've been, for example, using the app several times over a certain amount of time. So when those three conditions are met, the browser will prompt the user to install your app to home screen. By the way, I won't go into the details here, but you can catch the prompt event and then defer that to another time, or for example, do something like add a button to your site, to install this app to home screen. So you have some control at that point over how the user is prompted to install the home screen. Now, you might think, well, why don't we just give all this control to developers? Like I say, the crucial part of this is it must not be kind of spammy. It must feel like, a high quality experience. It must be something that the user trusts. In other words, like I say, an app must work offline. You must get this consistent experience when the user taps on the home screen icon. And of course, if we allowed developers to pop the prompt to install button immediately that the user got to a website, that's really frustrating. Those websites you go to, and as soon as you go to the website, you get something popping up saying, install our app, or buy this, or, do something. Users need to show signs of engagement before it's a good time to prompt them to install. So that's a great way to start, engaging your users, just simply by having that presence on the home screen and also having a really good install and startup experience. Now, I want to talk a bit more about how you can build on engagement with users and re-engage with users using something called push notifications. We've had some kind of push notifications for many years, various kinds, various kind of hacks, or I don't know, using techniques with like long polling or whatever to be able to push content to users. But the nice thing is we now have a standardized API for doing push, and the best part of this is that the browser does not need to be open for a push message to be received. In other words, you can send a push message to a user if they don't even have the browser open. As you can see here, they will still get a notification saying that they have a push message. This is, hugely powerful, and this is a fantastic feature for re-engagement that's been missing from the web until now. This is great for you, the developer. It makes life easy, and we hope this is good for users as well. But actually, it's it's good for business as well. I think Dion showed this example before. If you haven't seen this, big e-commerce company, Jumia, had a real problem with abandoned shopping sites, shopping carts, where users, got partway through a transaction, then gave up, and then never came back to complete transactions. Now Jumia tried various methods to get around this. They tried to get users' email addresses, and then if they abandoned a shopping cart, well, they email the users and say, hey, you abandoned your shopping cart, do you want to complete that purchase? And what they found was they actually got very poor results from that, very low rate of conversions. And of course, a lot of users don't like handing over their email address and getting emails from companies like that. When they implemented push notifications to do the same, they got a much better result. In general, what we're finding with push notifications is that you get a really high engagement level. They're great for provoking action in the user, for getting the user to do something. In lots of different scenarios, we're finding the same effect. Not just for Jumia. So for them, it meant a really big deal in terms of their business. But the core idea here too is that it's a way of engaging with users individually without needing them to give you, say, their email address or some other means to contact them. That they can get notifications right in the browser without any kind of asking for extra information. So let's have a look at that. I mean, I'm going to get onto the code later, but I really first wanted to kind of take you through some of the scenarios of the user experience, because this is a really crucial part of making sure that notifications work well. Users are very sensitive to this. Users are very happy to receive good notifications, but of course, users don't like it when they get notifications that feel like, you know, they're a nuisance, they're being spammed and all that. So I wanted to talk about some of the principles of this. And the first one is that, you know, a notification absolutely has to come at the right time. I'll show you some examples of that later. But, you know, the message in the notification needs to matter to the user right here, right now. Secondly, what you want is for a notification to be specific. I'll show examples of this, but you want specific information in the notification. You know, not something vague or general, but a specific action that the user can take or specific information that's useful to the user right now. Thirdly, of course, you know, it has to be relevant to the user. This is kind of part of the whole business of it being personal. You know, I'd say as a general rule, avoid sending, you know, just kind of general messages to all your users. That's generally not a good idea. You need to send stuff that's relevant to that person, that user. And I'll talk through some ways to do that. You know, the core idea here is that when you get a push notification, you are being interrupted. You know what it's like. You're working or you're with friends and you get a notification of some kind. It's an interruption. So whatever you send in a notification, it has to be worth it to the user that they get that interruption. It's a really simple idea. My friend Pete here took this fantastic photograph in Antarctica, I believe. He wants to do a developer day there as well. Maybe one day in Antarctica we'll have a developer day. Anyway, okay, the point of this image is that these little cute penguins here have been walking along, you know, going for a stroll, and, you know, someone notified them and said, watch out, there's this giant leopard seal here, you know. And, you know, for the penguins, that is relevant and it's timely. And, you know, it's personal for them. It has meaning to them. This is a kind of symbol of, you know, what amounts to a good notification. Anyway, so let's try it out with some real examples. Remember these three ideas, you know, precise, timely, relevant. Well, this is a classic good notification. You know, you get a notification like this. It tells you a particular flight is delayed, even gives you the new departure time. You don't need to do anything more. This is all the information you need. This is actually a pattern we've seen with really good notifications, that you actually can build a notification that has everything right there in the notification. You know, we often think of notifications as a way to get users to follow a link and open a web page, but you can also use notifications to give information right there. So, you know, the user has all the information they know without having to look anywhere else. Now, this is not so good. So, you know, we've got a notification that, you get a notification that your credit card has been compromised, but you don't know anything else. It's too vague. It's really hard to know what's going on. From that, you have no idea what it means. Now, something like this would be much better. In this example, we've got kind of similar message, but it actually says what's happened, what's gone wrong, and why you need to you know, think about what happened on the credit card. And in this case, we've actually got these two buttons here. I'll show you how to do this later, but you can actually add buttons to notifications. So you can do stuff like respond to simple requests, you know, I don't know, confirm a reservation at a restaurant or something like that. Yeah, Google Plus, that's not so good. Anyone use Google Plus? I don't think so. Anyway, this, yeah, you know, this is a kind of okay kind of message, but there's nothing there. There's no information. Something like that is much better. You know, it's personal because it's got like the face of my friend, and it's actually got a message from them, you know, telling me what I need to know, which is great. Now imagine, yeah, like imagine a company like Google started a self-driving kind of taxi company. You might call it Goober. That would be good. And yeah, this is another good notification. It's specific. All the information I need is right there in the notification. Do not do this. You know, if you implement notifications, do not use them to tell the user that they've installed your app. That is of no value to the user. You know, the notification has to have something that's of value to the user, and that, just don't do it. It's, yeah, nothing good about that. Something like this is kind of fine. You know, it could be a bit better, but yeah, a little more information perhaps would work. So I'd like to just talk through kind of, before I get to the code, actually give you kind of overview of how the process works, of subscribing users, sending messages, and then on the receiving side, you know, how messages are displayed. The nice thing about the push API is that it's built on Service Worker. Now, as you've seen, Service Workers can be used to intercept outgoing requests. So, you know, to intercept like a fetch request. In this example, yeah, we're getting a request there, and then looking in the cache, seeing if we've got something, and if not, we go out to the network and get it. Now, the cool thing about Service Worker is that it can also handle incoming events. So events from the operating system or the network, you know, something like push. So in this example, we get a push event that's handled by the Service Worker. So you can see that it's just responding to a push event there that comes from a push service, and then we get the data about the push events from the data that's in the, you know, the body and icon and so on in the JSON. I'll talk more about that in a moment. The good thing about that is that you know, we have this ability for like I say, the Service Worker to be woken up when it's been asleep. So you don't need to have a process running to receive push messages. I'll talk more about that. So, okay, here's the process for subscribing users. Well, of course, the first thing you've got to do is check if the user is subscribed. If they're not subscribed, you ask them to subscribe, and then they go through a subscription process. They get subscription data that identifies them from the browser. I'll show you how that works. You then send that subscription data to your server and store it on the server, on your server, so you can then contact that user later to send a message. Now on the send side, you generate a message on your server. It needs to be encrypted. You send then to the push service, and the push service associated with the browser then sends that message to the user. And then on the browser side, we handle the incoming message. Like I say, hang on, sorry, from the server, we're then generating the message, which is sent to the individual user. And then on the endpoint, as in like the device, the operating system will send a message to the browser will wake up, the Service Worker will wake up, and then as the push event happens, the Service Worker starts, and then the Service Worker can display a notification, like we saw before. Now, the great thing about this is that, like I say, the Service Worker doesn't have to be awake to handle the message. The Service Worker is woken up when a push message arrives. So just to give you a picture of the whole setup again. So for each browser, the browser has its own push service. So when you want to send a message to the user, you send a request to the push service with information that identifies the user. Then the push service sends the message to the user, and the endpoint then wakes up the Service Worker, and a notification can be displayed. So this might sound a little kind of unwebby, because, you know, this idea that we have a different push service for each browser. What's nice is that this has been standardized with something called the Web Push Protocol. What this means is that no matter what push service the browser uses, you write the same code, the same JavaScript on the client side, the same code on the server side, to be able to send and handle messages. This is really nice, because I don't know if has anyone in the past used push notifications? Has anyone built push notifications in their apps? Okay, a few people. I mean, people may have noticed before you had to set up individual IDs and so on to use push notifications. Well, the nice thing now is that push notifications work the same way in every browser. And what that means is, you know, as you may know, push is not supported by iOS yet, like Safari running on iOS. But when it is, your code will work on iOS exactly as it will now on browsers running on Android, which is great. So we also need to authenticate the transactions, the communication between the user and your server, and between your server and the user, yeah? You need to be able to trust that a request for a subscription comes from the user that you think it does. And the other way around, the user must be able to trust that a message received is actually from the site that they think they're getting the message from. Now, the protocol we have for this is called Vapid. I won't go into the details particularly, but the core idea here is that the communication between the user and your web service is authenticated, and the communication between your web server via the push service to the user is authenticated. So the user can trust you, and you can trust the user. This is absolutely crucial. You know, you can do a lot of this work to kind of set up push messaging yourself. What I would say is that have a look at our libraries for web push. You know, these are maintained by the Chrome team. They're really well written, and you know, even if you're rolling your own push messaging service, I would recommend that you use these libraries. It's just like, for example, using like a server using Node. It's a really straightforward way to generate and send messages, just using the library. And we have code labs for that as well, so you can try that out. So, I just want to run through the actual code for this, beginning by talking about like subscribing and unsubscribing. So, the first thing you need to do, you know, this is a progressive web app, so we need to actually check that service worker is implemented by seeing if we can see that in Navigator. And then once the service worker is registered successfully, we can then get at the Push Manager API. Now, the Push Manager API is what we use to manage subscription data. And in this example, we're getting a subscription. So that subscription object, like this bit, is what has the information about the identity of the end user, yeah? That's the data that enables you, your web server, to be able to send a message to the right user. And I'll show you how we go on with that later. So if we need to subscribe the user, if they haven't subscribed already, it's a kind of similar process. We get the service worker registration, and then we subscribe the user. Now, you'll see a couple of options here. The first one here, user visible only true. This is really crucial. If you're receiving push messages in your application, you must show a notification. You know, this is not an API. This is not a way to push data. This is specifically an API for sending messages to be displayed in notifications. If you don't show a notification when you receive a push message, you know, pop a notification from your service worker, the system, the browser, will pop up a dialogue, you know, saying that it received a notification. The idea of this is that otherwise it would be possible for a malicious site to just continually send, you know, thousands of messages to the end user. And that's just a simple way to stop that. The application server key has encryption data for, like I say, making sure that the communication is authenticated all the way from the user to your web server and via the push service back to the user. And in this example, it shows that then once we've got the subscription object, what we're doing in this case is calling a function that then would actually send the subscription data to your server. And in other words, that's the identifying data for the user that you would send to your server that enables you then to send a message to that particular user. What's called the endpoint data. And then, yeah, obviously in all of this, you know, we just have console logs here, but make sure if you're implementing push notifications that you work well with UI and UX to ensure that the user understands when they subscribed and when that's happened successfully. So let's look at that in a little more detail. Like I said, this subscription object is what identifies the user. This is what you save on your server so that when you make a request to the push service to send the user a message, that you have some way of identifying which user it is you're talking about. So that's that bit at the top there. This represents the push service, and this bit here is identifier for the individual user. And then we've got the keys to ensure that that process is secure. A little diversion here about user experience. It's really important that, like add to home screen, that you choose the right moment to prompt a user if they would like to receive push messages. Now, what we have seen in some apps is that as soon as you go to the website, you get a message, a dialogue popped up. Would you like to subscribe to push messages? In general, that is not a good time. You need to wait until a user is showing signs of engagement before you actually prompt them if they would like to receive push messaging. Alternatively, you can just let them do that, interactively. And I'll show an example of that. If you do pop up a prompt to receive push messages, make sure it's really clear what's going on. Make sure that the user understands what they're being asked and what the process is. A really nice example of people who are doing a really good job of prompting for push notifications is the Weather Channel. What they have is a very clear UI, UX for subscribing to push notifications. And what's nice is that it's clear that for the user that what's happening in the first place, but also that they then have the ability to choose different types of notifications. So for different sections of the site, this is really important. If you're if you're not sure what users might want from your site in terms of notifications, then think about sending different notifications for different subjects. So in this example, the Weather Channel gives the user the option to subscribe to like breaking news, whatever that means, or they can just subscribe to alerts that are issued by the government. So give the user options. If you think you have more than one kind of push message, then give the user options to choose. So unsubscribing. Obviously, you have to give users a nice interface for unsubscribing. Some users may unsubscribe, resubscribe. Make sure that process of unsubscribing is really seamless and it works well. Here's the code for that. Again, we're getting the service worker registration object, and then once we get the subscription object, it's as simple as calling the unsubscribe method, and that means the user is then unsubscribed to push messages for that domain. Now, like I said, we have the web push protocol, which is really nice because it standardizes the process of sending messages. The kind of core part of this is that messages must be encrypted. We need the whole kind of communication flow to be encrypted from start to finish. So when you send a message from your web server to the push service, that message must be encrypted. Let's actually have a look at the payload for that. Remember, that was the subscription object identifies the user. This is given to us by the browser. So at the start here, we have the URL for the push service. And the last part of this is the identifier for the individual user. So when you want to send a message to a user, it's as simple as making a put request to the push service, which looks like that. Let's break this down a bit. The first part is the actual domain of the origin of the push service, and then the path, which includes what we call the endpoint. So this again is the bit that identifies the user. Did anyone see this last? This was crazy. Like I think last year, like there was a video of a shark eating through an internet cable. Unbelievable. I think in Vietnam. It was incredible, just destroying an internet cable. Anyway, the point of this is that you cannot rely on your user being online. So what we have in the payload, or the headers rather, for the request to the push service is a time to live, TTL, time to live. What this one specifies is for the push service to keep trying for 120 seconds to send a message to the end user. Now, if you think about it, there are some messages which have to be received immediately. If they're not received within, say 1 minute, then they are irrelevant. There are other messages that, might be valid to send for several hours. So, that TTL value is really handy for sending different types of messages. Like I say, it is the number of seconds that the push service will keep trying to send a message to the end user. And then we've got some other kind of necessary headers there for content type and encoding, and encryption values, and the authorization value. And like I say, we have this exchange of keys so that we can be sure that the user is who we think they are, and for the user's point of view, that they're receiving, the message, the actual message that you sent, and from the site that they think they're getting that message from. And then, we have an authorization header there as well. And this last bit is meant to represent the actual encrypted payload. The cool thing is now, just to repeat that you can send a payload in a notification. At the very start of this, it wasn't actually possible to send a payload. All you could do was notify the end user that there was a notification. But just to be clear, it's now possible to send a payload. And I'll talk a bit more about that now. Like I say, check out the web push libraries, because this is much the easiest way to send push messaging from your server. We'll have some URLs at the end too that we'll share with you. So on the incoming side, this is pretty straightforward. You're in the service worker, you're listening out for a message. Like I say, the browser doesn't even have to be opening. The system will wake up the browser, will wake up the service worker, and the service worker will get a push event. And then from the push event, just look at the data, get the JSON from that. And in this case, showing like a simple notification with a title, some body text, the icon data, and then this last part, the tag value. Now, what this does is allows you to send multiple notifications on the same subject. What that means is that the browser will not pop up different notifications. It won't keep popping up new notifications. It will understand that you're sending, maybe a different message, but using the same notification. So it's just a way, in a sense, of grouping, notifications to avoid sending, push messages that result in more and more and more notification dialogues. Here's an example of a pattern we're seeing a lot now. Like I say, one of the nice things about push notifications is that you can actually get the whole experience for the user in the notification. No need to go to a web page, no need to, go anywhere, do anything. They can actually complete their task right there in the notification. So in this example, they're just confirming a restaurant booking. Really simple. All the information is there, it's precise, it's relevant, it's timely, and all the action happens right there in the notification. A really nice pattern we're seeing in lots and lots of different contexts. So for that example, to get those buttons, you have the this bit here, which is the action stuff here. So to have a button displayed in a notification, you have you give the action a name, and you give it a title, what's actually displayed, and then an icon, you know, the image that's displayed next to it. And then I'll show you how that works. So once the user actually clicks on the notification, you'll get a notification click event that you can handle, and then you listen out for the event and then check the name of the action, or the action rather, and in this case we're looking for one called like, and then, you know, acting accordingly. So we can make a fetch request that shows that that user clicked on a like button. Or we could do some other stuff too, like we could, I don't know, open a window, or lots of other actions. So, you know, I think these notifications are really, really powerful. The kind of core idea is that we're seeing, like, users are very active in response to notifications. They are a great way of keeping this connection, building this engagement with users without, you know, if you get it right, without being intrusive. You know, there are lots of great things we're seeing. We're really interested to see what you do with push notifications. Really interesting stuff that people are doing with that. You know, maybe not what we've expected. We have a lot of more information online. Please take a look at this stuff. There's a stack of stuff on our Web Fundamentals site about push notifications. A lot of information there. And we're regularly writing updates as well as kind of changes come in and new features are built, and we see more implementations. Yeah, like I say, really looking forward to what you make of push notifications. Like I say, we would love to hear from you. So, you know, thank you very much. And if you're doing something great with push notifications, please email me. If you have questions, come and talk to us. You know, we'd love to find out more about what people are doing with push notifications, and what, if you're coming up against problems as well. So, thank you.
好，下面是那个现场提问时间 ，OK， 那边。
Hi, in my opinion, the PWA want to improve user experience at mobile, at web in the Chrome. But I want to know the PWA and hybrid app. Can you compare between two things? And when the first question, and the second question is when user responds the push notification, can I call the Android native notification, or can I call Android telephone? Maybe this native action can I do? Yeah, that's two questions.
Okay, so the first question I wasn't sure about. The second question, I mean, you could, I guess, fire an intent, call an intent URL. Will that work? I'm not sure that would. I don't think that will. So I'm not sure that there's a way to make a, like, you're asking to make a telephone call in response to a notification?
Pardon?
For the user would make a telephone call in response to a notification.
Yeah. When people want to respond the push notification, maybe the people want to call want to watch the Android native notification, or Android native telephone message. Maybe the push notification can call Android native application.
Yeah,
That's
I don't think there's any way to get, like, to access, you know, I don't think there's any way to access the Android, you know, telephone, so to speak, from a push notification. No.
just only push notification, cannot call the native.
No, I don't think there's any way that you could access like the telephone functionality, so to speak. Maybe come and chat to me afterwards. I'll see if I can give more information. What was the first question though? Was the difference between?
First question, I want to know, can you compare the PWA and the hybrid app? This two production road.
So PWA and hybrid apps?
Yeah, can you compare?
Well, I mean, there may be contexts where a hybrid app works really well. It depends. It depends on your need. If you need an app that must appear in an app store, then you might want to build a hybrid app. Otherwise, there are lots of good reasons I would say, for using progressive web apps. The biggest reason from my perspective is that you reduce the barrier to users actually getting at your app. I think Dion's example was fantastic, where he could send his father a link to a page, and his father, he's not asking his father to install an app or anything like that. So I think it depends on your requirements as a developer. But I think my advice would be to try using a progressive web app, and then if you feel a need to, have an app in an app store, then maybe consider hybrid apps. I don't think it's clear cut. It's not never use hybrid apps, or I don't think there are specific scenarios where necessarily one is better than the other.
I have a little question. Will the manifest setting affect my caching strategy? So if I installed my website on the desktop and I update my resources or assets, will the icon refresh or renew the data?
Okay. No. Yeah, at the moment, no. But I believe there's some work to fix that. You mean if you update the icon, you want the home screen icon to be updated? At the moment, no. But we want to see that in future.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it's crucial. If your brand changes and so on. Yeah.
Will Android WebView plan to support push service?
Sorry, say that again.
Will Android WebView plan to support push service?
So how does not good? I mean, Pete's making the point that if you were working with a hybrid app, you would probably be implementing push natively anyway.
Yeah, at that point, you've got a native app, so why not just use the typical native stuff? And that is the smarter, more efficient way. If you already have a native app, there's no need to put push notifications in a web view.
Four-party browser implement push service or other app.
That's
for other apps.
So you're saying for somebody who's building a browser that just wraps a web view. So you've got your own you're a browser vendor without actually building a browser. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason why you can't, like say you had a browser that was, within a hybrid app, there's no reason why the hybrid app can't receive push notifications and then, notify the browser, and as if the browser had, been like outside of a hybrid app, so to speak.
I think the key piece there, and I don't have the answer to this, is I don't know if service workers work in WebView, and my guess is that they don't, but I'm not positive on that. So that would be the whole gating factor, right?
Okay, thank you.
One last question.
Hello,
Hey.
sir.
Hello.
A very wonderful speech.
Thank you.
What I wanted, my question is the web push notifications based on the GCM?
Okay, yeah, so on Chrome on Android, yes. But the
iOS.
crucial thing about the push API and the web push protocol is that you can implement, with different browsers, can implement web push notifications with a different push service. So, yeah.
Yeah. And do you think it will work well in China? It's based on the GCM.
Well, it depends on the browser. You know, it depends on, say, like if, I mean, I know actually UC use a different system for push notifications. But, you know, if UC or QQ or other browsers want to implement push notifications, they can certainly do that using their own push service. It's up to the browser vendor to choose a push service that they interact with. The nice thing about the standardization is that as a developer, you don't need to change your code. You know, the point of that is that you would write the same code on the client, same JavaScript, same code on the server side, and it would just work given the standardization of the APIs. So, yeah, it's up to the browser vendors to choose what push service they use, but the actual underlying APIs will just work.
One last question. Would you explain a little bit of GCM? I'm really wonder how does this work?
Yeah.
The theory.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, the core idea is that you know, I don't know the real detail of how it works, but the core concept is that there is the minimal possible traffic between the push service and the endpoint. Some things I do know is that like some messages can be bundled together so that that the end user device isn't constantly being woken up and using radio. So yeah, services like GCM, running with Android use a lot of clever algorithms to make sure that there's the minimal traffic between the two sockets, so to speak, between the service and the end user, the operating system on the device.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
but it's nothing. What we've had in the past is stuff which, like long polling, which essentially you're keeping, you're constantly making requests and refreshing those. The nice thing about push messaging like this, standardized, is that it uses the underlying, operating system features to kind of, minimize the battery, CPU, memory usage.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, thank you.